I'd like to call to order the meeting, the July 13th business meeting of the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded as a public record. A recording of the meeting will be available at www.ncwildlife.org. As a courtesy to others, please turn off all cell phones during the meeting. And at this time, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Tom Berry to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And at this time, I'd like to recognize Commissioner Landon Zimmer to provide our invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lord, thank you for this day and for those who are here sharing their time, talent, and compassion for North Carolina's wildlife resources and the habitats in which they live. We pray that you will inspire us in our commitment to care for all of your creatures, from the humble hellbender to the mighty black bear, and grant us the wisdom and respect needed to have a clear vision of ways to protect them. We pray for your guidance as we make decisions regarding the wildlife of your kingdom, their habitats, resources, and ways to nourish their lives and protect their fragility. Let all of God's people together say, amen.
Amen.
At this time, I would recognize Margot Minkler to conduct a roll call of commissioners present.
Good morning. I'm gonna do a roll call for commissioners present for our July 13th, 2023 meeting. Monty Crump,
Here.
Tommy Fumble,
Here.
David Hoyle.
Here.
John Coley, Wes Seegers.
Here.
Mark Craig, Tom Berry,
Here.
Brad Stanback,
Here.
Jim Ruffin,
Here.
Ray Clifton,
Here.
Kelly Davis, Steve Wyndham,
Here.
Landon Zimmer,
Here.
John Stone,
Here.
Hayden Rogers,
Here.
John Alexander,
Here.
Tom Hayslip,
Here.
J.C. Cole,
Step down.
Mike Alford.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Margot. We will continue the meeting at this time. North Carolina General Statute 138A-15 mandates that the commission chair shall remind all commissioners of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict under this chapter, and that the chair also inquires as to whether there is any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before the commission at this time. It is the duty of each commissioner who is aware of such personal conflict of interest or of an appearance of a conflict to notify the chair of the same. And at this time, or to ask, are there any requests for recusals?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from a property matter when that time arises, Exhibit E at that time, but I'll recuse myself in the interest of time. Just refer to that in a later statement.
That would be Exhibit E2,
Yes,
the
sir.
request for easement from NCDOT.
That's correct.
Thank you. The minutes of two meetings that we've had since our last business meeting, including the last business, have been distributed to each of you and has been provided in your agenda packet there. So at this time, are there any additions or corrections to the minute meetings of April 20th or June 6th that we need to address? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of April 20th and June 6th, which are exhibits A and B. Got a motion and a second, Paul and Alfred. You that?
Yes, sir.
Any further comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of adoption of the approval of these 2 minutes, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, minutes are approved. This time I'd call on Jason Cottle to provide financial status report. Jason, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start with a quick overview of the numbers. I'm going to remind everybody, due to the time it takes to close out each month, the figures that we're looking at today are as of May 31st. So June figures are not yet closed and available. In our general fund category, We see total revenues of $100,367,887.22. Total expenditures of $101,726,928.14. For a fund balance as of May 31st, $17,983,345.57. In our capital improvement funds, we've got total revenues as of May 31, $10,187,277.35. Total expenditures, $10,451,917.05. From fund balances of May 31 of $3,017,196.11. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to entertain them. Otherwise, we'll move along to the endowment fund update. As of May 31st, 2023, we had an overall investment in our endowment fund, or excuse me, overall value of our endowment fund of $159,046,113.35. We can see an asset allocation displayed of roughly 77% equities, 23% bonds. Historically, what we've displayed up here when we talk about the asset allocation is just the breakdown of those funds held at Bank of New York. A question was raised yesterday as to what percentage the short-term investment fund makes up of this. So I have got some notes here that are not included in that slide. We take into account those funds held in the state treasurer and the short-term fund. Bond investments make up about 22.15% of the total endowment. Equities making up 73.25%. And rounding it out with the short-term fund comprising currently about 4.6% of our overall endowment. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this time.
Any commissioners have any question or comment about the financial status report? I know we have a charge we'll discuss later on about taking it to short-term investment, that we'll be back with a recommendation in August, but I think we've addressed that. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, everyone.
It's time we have committee reports, and I'll start with the executive committee report. The executive committee met yesterday at 8 a.m. and adjourned into a closed session to review the executive director's 22-23 performance evaluation and job review under North Carolina General Statute 143, 318A, A6. Went into closed session. After returning to open session, the meeting was adjourned. This is a process we started several years ago to do an annual performance review and evaluation of the executive director. I think it's proven by feedback we've gotten from commissioners and the executive committee. This has proven to be beneficial for the commission and understanding what our leadership goals and objectives are for the organization. And I also think Cam appreciates the feedback he gets from the commission. And I think it helps add to the success of the commission. So the review went very well yesterday. And we reviewed objectives and goals for the coming year that we'll be sharing with the commission over the next couple of months. That went well. And that's, are there any questions or comment about that report from the executive committee on the performance evaluation? And I appreciate everybody's feedback. I opened the floor a week or so ago to get feedback from not only the executive committee, but the full commission. And I heard from a lot of you, and that feedback was very successful and was shared yesterday. So here, no further comments or questions on that. We'll move forward to Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species Committee report and Chairperson Kelly Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Hinges Committee met from 9 o'clock to 9:44 a.m. on Wednesday, July 12th, 2023. Dr. Sarah Schweitzer, Assistant Chief, Terrestrial Wildlife Diversity Program, gave a summary of public comments received for the bog turtle and the southern hognose snake conservation plans. All comments were in support of the plans and no significant edits were suggested. Plans are exhibits M1 and M2 and will be considered by the Commission for final adoption during the business meeting today. Dr. Schweitzer and Rachel Hoke, Assistant Chief, Aquatic Wildlife Diversity Program, provided summaries on 6 birds and 1 freshwater mollusk, including results from status assessment tool evaluations. Status changes were proposed for 4 bird species and 1 mussel species, and no change in listing status for 2 bird species. The Hinges Committee members reviewed and supported the staff's recommendations. The proposed status changes will be taken to the Rules Committee meeting in August 2023. Rachel Hope presented technical corrections to the protected animals list, including 3 corrections due to federal status changes and 20 corrections to update scientific and common names. Angie's committee members supported taking the proposed technical corrections to the Rules Committee meeting in August 2023. Shannon Deaton, Chief, Habitat Conservation Division, presented information on the 2023 Thomas L. Quay Wildlife Diversity Award. Angie's committee members were asked to submit ballot votes for a nominee. The results will be shared with the Hinges Committee Chair in preparation for a commission recommendation at the August 2023 Committee of the Whole. Concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Comment on the report from the Habitat Non-Game Endangered Species for? Hear none, we'll move forward. At this time, I recognize Chairman John Stone, Chair of the Fisheries Committee, for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The meeting was called to order at 9:45 on July 12th. We did have an agenda, or had a quorum and proceeded with business. We started out with Christian Waters presenting the fish rule proposals for the 2024-2025 regulatory cycle, including proposals to reaffirm the authority of the Wildlife Resource Commission over species designated inland game fish in all public waters and over all other fish taken by hook and line in joint fishing waters. David Deaton, our fish production supervisor, then gave an overview of the 7 state fish hatcheries, including challenges for and future directions of the production program, and showed videos of each facility that will be shared with the public on the Wildlife Resource Commission website. Christian Waters presented a request from the town of Black Mountain to be designated as a Mountain Heritage Trout City in the classified section of the Shenandoah River as Mountain Heritage Trout Waters, which will be presented later in Exhibit N for consideration by the full commission. Christian then provided an update on the management of Roanoke River striped bass, including actions taken by WRC to reduce overall mortality and improve recruitment. He'd also stated that Watho Fish Hatchery staff produced and stocked 1.4 million fry in May and 650 fingerlings in June. Corey Oakley, the Inland Fisheries Assistant Chief, then gave us a presentation about a new stocking project where F1 largemouth bass are being stocked annually into Lake Norman, Lake Gaston, and Jordan Lake for 5 years. And will be evaluated for persistence in the population and growth potential. Corey then shared how staff participated in Major League Fishing's Bass Pro Tour Redcrest 2023 Expo at Lake Norman, which included interacting with 50 to 100,000 constituents, conducting fishery seminars, and recording podcasts. Corey then shared that the Two Ball Biologist podcast, which began in April of last year, now has almost 60,000 individual listens and is averaging 4,000 to 5,000 downloads per episode. He emphasized the importance of the podcast and connecting with constituents through emails and comments that are being shared with staff across the state. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to mention that Corey Oakley is one of the stars of the podcast.
Very good.
The meeting then adjourned at 11:45 a.m.
Are there any questions or comment concerning the report from the Fisheries Committee? Hearing none, thank you. We'll move forward now and I'll call on Land Acquisitions Property Committee Chair to Tom Berry to present your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. The Land Acquisition Property Committee met yesterday on the 12th. And the committee reviewed 9 land and water access rule proposals for the 24-25 cycle. Committee also reviewed and endorsed 3 Phase 1 land acquisition proposals, 5 Phase 2 proposals, as well as 2 other property matters. In total, committee reviewed 8 land acquisition programs, total of 3,607 acres. Acquisitions range from a game land addition, establishment of new game lands in Forsyth County, and the addition of a waterfowl impoundment in Hyde County. We continue to look for underserved areas of the state to create new game lands. The Payne Tract, as mentioned, in Forsyth County looks very promising. The staff has been challenged to seek out desirable new access to open up more of our game lands for general use. Those were our issues, and we adjourned early, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comment or Chairman Barry reference land acquisitions property committee report? Thank you. Hearing none. At this time, I'll recognize Chairman Jim Ruffin of the Small Game and Wild Turkey Committee for your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Small Game and Wild Turkey Committee met yesterday. We had an excellent meeting with a packed agenda on a variety of topics. Chris Dawes gave us a very informative update on the small game focal area on Caswell Game Lands. Thanks to the efforts of Chris and the WRC staff, things are continuing to move along very nicely. And we are excited about the progress and the things to come from their efforts. Hannah Plumpton, Upland Game bird biologist, shared an update on the 2023 wild turkey harvest, which was a record harvest. She also provided some insight into some of the finer points of the turkey harvest and shared some very interesting data related to the harvest timing and hunting effort. Assistant Chief Chris Cray shared some exciting information about the past and future wild turkey research in North Carolina, which I might add is very extensive, and we really look forward to that data and what it will show us. The commission is learning more. What you get for one off script. The commission is looking forward to learning more about the results of this research. Brad Howard gave us an update to the committee on the rule proposals that are under consideration for the upcoming rule cycle. The proposals are focused on an ongoing effort to simplify our rules associated with controlled hunting preserves, field trials, and dog training. These suggested changes should help clarify several confusing issues related to these activities and be beneficial for our constituents. Finally, the committee received and approved the staff's recommendation for the recipient of this year's Lawrence G. Diedrich Small Game Award. Mr. Richard Baldwell was presented as a staff's recommendation for the individual award. Mr. Baldwell manages extensive property in Bladen County adjacent to Suggs Mill Game Lands. His efforts and dedication to small game management are extensive. He burns his property annually. Last year alone, he burned over 450 acres. He is a member of the local prescribed fire council and routinely shares his expertise and enthusiasm with other local landowners. Mr. Baldwell is indeed a well-deserving nominee for the Diedrich Individual Award. The staff recommended Dylan Epp and Dr. Theron Terung of Orton Plantation as our group award recipient for this year. Dylan and Theron, along with Orton Plantation, are leaders in early successional management in Southeast North Carolina and continue to foster outstanding habitat work on the plantation, as well as conducting and promoting ongoing research on the property on quail and quail management, as well as other wildlife species. Orton serves as a premier example of what quail habitat and quail management can look like in the sandy soils of southeastern North Carolina. Mr. Chairman, based on a unanimous consent by the committee, I make a motion to approve Richard Baldwell as an individual recipient and Dylan Epp and Dr. Theron Terun of Orton Plantation as our group recipient for the Lawrence G. Diedrich Small Game Award for 2023.
You have a motion as stated by the chair. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Got a second from Steve Wyndham. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and awards made. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Chairman. That concludes my report.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to Big Game Committee report. Chairman David Hoyle.
Game Committee met Wednesday, July the 12th. Chief Brad Howard shared several rule ideas up for discussion this cycle. One is related to the legality of selling shed antlers. Several deer proposals were associated with efforts to adjust the western deer season to conform better with the biological objectives of deer management while matching the desires of the western deer hunters. In addition, there was a proposal to adjust either sex seasons in the far western counties. This is good news as our deer population continues to improve on the private lands in those areas. And for the first time in decades, there will be a snow day in the firearm season in these counties. The other idea addresses bear seasons in the Mountain Bear Management Unit. The concept proposed at present would shift the seasons earlier to allow for more biologically appropriate bear hunting season.
It would shift some timing around and minimize overlap with deer season. Staff is planning to host several bear hunting forums next week to continue conversations with bear hunters about these options. Brad then gave a brief update about the University of Tennessee elk study, which is now complete. Talked about a few interesting pieces of information, and when staff returns at our October meeting, they will promise a deeper dive into the results of the study. Finally, Chris Craig gave a brief CWD update, noting that both Florida and Oklahoma are now positive for CWD. Having no further business, the committee adjourns.
Are there any comments or questions for big game? Committee report from Chairman Hall. Here none, we'll move forward to the report of Committee of the Whole. The Committee of the Whole met yesterday at 3:45. The meeting began with permanent rulemaking notice of text and temporary permanent rulemaking adoptions and proposed rulemaking for 10A rules for 24-25 presented by Brad Howard, Melva Bonner, Betsy Howard, Betsy Haywood, and Kyle Briggs. Our CFO, Jason Cottle, then presented on the short-term investment fund as an investment for the Wildlife Endowment Fund. Without objection, I asked staff to work with the Finance Committee Chair and Vice Chair to bring an asset allocation recommendation back for discussion and consideration at the August Commission meeting. Brian Daniels and Bobby Dunn then provided an update on the transition of our licensing system to Go Outdoors North Carolina that went live on July 1st. It has been a very successful launch, but as expected, there are a few kinks and challenges, but staff is working diligently with the vendor to ensure that changes keep moving forward as smoothly as possible. Executive Director Ingram recognized all of the staff that have worked so hard to make the transition successful, and he especially recognizes the work of Brian Daniels and Bobby Drum for their role leading the change. Next, the Committee of the Whole held consideration of moving off a nomination of officers for chair and vice chair to today's meeting for affirmation. And then lastly, Executive Director Ingram introduced Anna Gurney, the agency's new public relations manager, who is with us today here on the front row on this side. We quickly touched on this, but and I'm sure Cam will have some comments here in a few minutes, but the change over to the digital platform to Go Outdoors North Carolina, it's a legacy achievement for the Wildlife Commission and everybody in this room, particularly our staff led by Lisa Holcutt, commissioners that have been involved in vendor selection. This has been over a 1.5 to 2-year process that started with a threat assessment of our old system that we had I think, for like 18 years with Alvin. Is that right? Is that number right? 18 years for Alvin. That we realized we needed to join this century, but plus also to leave a system that had served us well and was kept together with the employees that worked hard during that period of time. But at the same time with IT, the threat assessment, things moving forward, and we all understand that we are a receipt based agency that we operate on our customers that renew and purchase hunting and fishing license, visual registration, and the other fees associated with that. And it's very important that we have an operating system that meets those needs and provides the revenue and the financial resources in a timely manner to keep the agency going. And that was everybody's focus during this whole entire process. And it's been very successful. And my hat's off to all of them. Great job. I mean, Kyle, all of you, great job. So I just wanted to, and it is indeed a legacy achievement for this commission. Are there any more comments or questions on the report from Committee of the Whole? If not, I'll call on Gary Gardner to introduce our speaker for our agency spotlight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity this morning to spotlight the Engineering Division's WISE program and some of our partnership projects. Presenting today is Michael Leggett.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure we have to do all that.
Civil engineer, Eric is the division's lead engineer. In that capacity, he helps us manage the project workload across the team as well as managing our construction schedule and program management. So I'll turn it over to Michael.
All right, thank you, Gary. Good morning.
Morning.
So our spotlight for today focuses on, like Gary said, our WISE program and some other partnerships and projects we've recently completed. Our WISE program. So what is our WISE program? WISE stands for our Wildlife Inmate Services Program. And it's a joint partnership between the Department of Public Safety and the Resources Commission that was started around 2006. And really the sole goal of the program is to produce a variety of products. Most of these products are wood carpentry style products like floating docks, kiosks, things like that we utilize, while also providing training opportunities and skills development to individuals who are at the Dan River Prison Work Farm. And that facility is located in Yanceyville, North Carolina. And this is a picture of the exterior of the facility. It's directly adjacent to the prison. We have one full-time employee with the Resources Commission that manages the program. David, he does a great job. And we also have a temporary employee who is responsible for making deliveries across the state of the products that are produced at this site. In addition to those individuals, you know, kind of on any given day, you could have probably between 4 to 12 inmates working at this facility with one guard on site just to ensure that they're meeting public safety guidelines. Who benefits? Well, we, you know, as a Resources Commission, primarily are the biggest beneficiary of this program. If you've been to any of our boat access sites or fishing access sites, chances are you've seen a product that's been produced at this facility, whether it's informational kiosk, floating docks, floating fishing piers, signage. In addition to the products we receive, those products are also available for purchase by public entities like schools, universities, towns, and other state and federal partners. In addition to what kind of those products that are produced, it's a very popular program within the prison itself. Those guys enjoy kind of the freedom that comes with it, kind of working with their hands and developing those carpentry skills. So benefits, you know, the probably the biggest benefit is we receive a reliable product that we know kind of holds up to our performance standards for our sites. Over the years, we've developed designs, especially it relates to floating piers and fishing piers that ensure they're meeting code compliance, ensure they're meeting safety compliance, ADA compliance. So, you know, we know kind of what we're getting when we design a site, and we know what can be installed and make sure that the performance standards are there. In addition to that, it's great to have that line of communication with the program. If a specific site calls for something a little different, we can make modifications pretty easily to those. Maybe a site, maybe we need a 6-foot wide dock as opposed to an 8-foot wide dock. So it's easy to have that line of communication and make those changes. These products can be easily replaced. Let's say a dock gets damaged in the field. Our maintenance guys in the field can make a call, have another dock delivered on site, floated in place, and easily install it. They're not having to recreate something in the field to replace it. And once they meet the end of their life, a lot of these products can be sent back to WISE. They can be rehabbed, they can be reused, and if they reach really the end of their life, a lot of times they're put in the surplus and can be purchased by other entities to maybe continue their usage. I've kind of hit on a lot of the products that are offered. They have a website that you can visit and see a lot of these elements that they offer. In addition to docks and piers, signage is a big one that they can produce. Hunting blinds, kind of that previous slide had an example of a blind that they produced, as well as fencing and a variety of other elements. And, you know, I kind of showed some pictures of that facility in some of those earlier slides, and they have kind of an assembly line process. They do a great job of producing a high volume of products. And these are just some raw numbers from 2022 year. They produced around 116 floating docks, around 68 fishing pier sections. And these these are pretty substantial elements. They're usually 12 foot wide, a lot of details with handrails, sitting benches and things like that. And then around 130 kiosks for that year were produced, not only for our boating access and fishing access area sites, but also for our game lands. Pretty much a standard floating pier that you would expect to see produced at the Wise facility. Again, one of the biggest benefits, our construction crews can do the construction, can do the grading work, they can do the erosion control measures and concrete work. And then when the time's ready, they can be delivered on site and those guys can float them in place and install them. So they're not having to take a substantial amount of more time to construct these components in the field. Another example of floating fishing pier produced at the Wise facility. This is a current project for town of Valdez. Kind of speaks to that modification component, standard pier, but we wanted to attach an ADA accessible canoe kayak launch to it. So having that line of communication, making sure the product that we received in the field matches kind of what our vision was for this particular project. Floating docks, a lot of floating docks produced there, easily changed out if they get old or damaged. And this project is for Henson Lake. And again, it speaks to that modification aspect. For this one, we wanted a courtesy dock to serve the newly constructed ramp. But at the same time, we wanted to have some finger docks attached to it to serve canoe kayak launch users. And for this one, we actually switched out the floats to give it a little bit lower profile to help those users. And kiosk, a lot of kiosks around the state. We like signage. We like a lot of room to put rules and regulations on. But when you pull up to a site and you see kind of this general kiosk, you kind of know that you're at a Wildlife Commission site. And signage, kind of a big benefit having this program. This is actually a picture from the sign room at the facility. They can just produce a variety of different signs for whatever sort of project we run into, whatever sort of situation we run into. And for that 2022 fiscal year, I think they produced around 1,300 signs, so they can produce a lot of signage. So our WISE program, that's kind of a specific partnership we have with the Department of Public Safety. But our engineering group, we're involved with numerous partnerships with local, state, and federal partners to provide additional boating and fishing access sites across the state. No partnership really is exactly the same, kind of like a marriage, I guess. But typically a partner will approach us to have a piece of property that's maybe associated with or attached to a river, stream, lake. They think they have a good property for an access point. Somebody in our engineering group will do a site visit, feasibility study. And if it looks good and kind of the stars align, then we'll move into an agreement with that entity to kind of define roles and responsibilities. So typically they're providing the property, they're allowing the public to use it. Typically, in most cases, they're providing total payment for construction, in some cases partial. And we as an engineering group will do the surveying, design, permitting, and ultimately the construction. And just a list at the bottom of this slide are some of the partners we've partnered with just in the last year. So the first project I wanted to highlight was our Battle Park project, which was completed in March of this year. And this was a partnership with Rocky Mount. Battle Park is a historic park that's kind of sandwiched in between US 64 and the Tar River. And the city really wanted to revitalize that park area. So they received a substantial amount of grant funding for additional amenities like mountain bike trails, Frisbee golf, repaving their greenway, but they really wanted to renovate their existing ramp and existing piers on site. A very important site for local fishermen in that area, especially for shad fishing. So we partnered together and the first thing we looked at was their ramp and being on site, we were like, the ramp doesn't look too terrible. Talking to some local fishermen, they're like, we always run off the end. And it's hard to see from this picture, but the sign there says the ramp ends in 20 feet. And it was only probably about 6 to 8 feet. So that was a big issue.
Didn't move aside.
So we demolished the existing ramp, installed a new ramp in the same footprint. We did lengthen it though and reinstalled the sign in the correct position for them. So they kind of know where the end of the ramp is now. This is another pier, the pier number 1 on that site. The pier really reached the end of its life. It was in pretty bad shape. You can't, maybe a little hard to see, but there's actually board and chain closing off the pier because it was a safety concern. So we removed the existing pier, installed a new pier with an ADA compliant handrail, new ADA sidewalk with handrails, new steps with handrails. And we also included a canoe kayak launch adjacent to the pier. The town really happy about. They're seeing a lot more float users. And this was pier number 2 on site. Hard to get to, but we were able to get to it, demolish it, take it out, and then install a new pier. Same general footprint, but ADA compliant. I think the biggest thing to highlight with this project, we weren't really sure whether our schedules were going to match up. We had a project load we were working through, and the town had grant deadlines they were trying to hit. So they actually received 1 bid for the work that was shown here for $313,000 for the work. And we were actually able to do the survey and design and construction for $187,000. So we saved them about $126,000 by partnering with them. The last one, and I'll kind of go through this a little quicker, because I know we're running out of time, but this is a site we completed in March of this year for the town of Randleman. It's called Worthville Road. This is on the Deep River, and it's a popular spot. There's a private dam right here, and just below the dam, there's a beach area. And a lot of people access the site for fishing, for floating. But the problem is that site is private, so there's no parking. So what was happening was people were parking on the side of the road. And having been out there, I can tell you that Worthville Road is not a leisurely country road. People kind of fly down the road and through this curve. So there was a safety concern there. But the town actually owned the parcel south of Worthville Road on the Deep River. So they approached us to see maybe if we can try to get an access site for them. And this is the site pre-construction. You can see Worthville Road to the right of the screen. We kind of settled on an area that was kind of clear at the bottom there. A lot of storm debris, so we weren't taking out a lot of trees. And we thought, we could get them in a maybe a small 12-foot wide ramp for float users. And here's the finished product after design and permitting. Gravel access road. We utilized an existing power line to squeeze in about 20 parking spots. And then you can see the ADA parking spot and the ramp at the bottom of the screen. Another shot of the ramp. There's some Wise products there too, the informational kiosk and signage. And then green up of the site. Site's really greened up really nicely in the spring. And again, this is a partnership, so they provided the property. They actually contributed $50,000 toward the project, and I think overall cost was around $143,000. So that was about $93,000 that we supplied to this project, again for a public access site on the Deep River. Any questions? Yes.
Michael, are the inmates able to travel to remote locations to do the installation work too?
Yeah, for the Rocky Mount project.
Well, just for any of you.
Yeah. That's not really a problem. Mhm.
And how long have we had this program?
For the WISE programs,
So how long have we had the WISE program?
it started in 2006.
Well, let me say this. Every commission meeting, we have an agency spotlight. I've been here for some period of time and I've never seen one that wasn't incredibly informative, beneficial, and I think it's just a great thing that we do. And shame on me, but this is the first time I've heard about the WISE program, so I'm delighted that you're here doing it. Maybe others that are hearing about this for the first time too. So I commend you. It's very well done. It's like something that's extremely worthwhile on a number of fronts. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Question, do we do any sort of tracking or follow-up work with any of the people that participate in the program to see what the recidivism rates are for those folks compared to other inmates that partner with us?
I don't think that we do personally. I think the prison kind of tracks some of that, but there must have feedback.
So who determines how much you contribute, and who and why will they contribute if it's a public access?
Yeah, it kind of varies project to project. Of course, a lot of the time we have the funding to do the project ourselves, but a lot of these municipalities like Rocky Mount, they already had a lot of money. We're planning to do it themselves. As Michael said, the bids, when they tried to bid it out privately, came in considerably higher than what we could do it, just because it is such specialized work. Our engineers and our construction. So it's just varies project to project, whatever funding they've got. And ultimately, a lot of times also we try to, in the agreement, have them do the long-term maintenance, the mowing, the trash pickup, that type of stuff. Take that off of the long.
Brandon,
Yeah, what a fantastic program. This is also the first time I've heard about this and hadn't been here as long as Tommy, but it's I mean, talk about a win-win. I mean, there's savings. I'd like to see this expanded to other services and include other programs. And that's fantastic.
There did used to be horticulture associated with the WISE facility. That was a partnership in addition with the local community college there in Yancey. They actually had a horticulture program and taught the prisoners horticulture. That kind of faded with community college. We were able to sell plants, but trees, that type of stuff. There's probably other opportunities. More and more municipalities and nonprofits find out about this.
but clearly we favor cities and counties that provide money to the project. They generally get put to the top of the table in exchange for a contribution.
So does DJ money play a role in it, the fishing money? Does it play a role?
That's, I mean, whatever their funding pots are, yeah.
So that, the sport fish money funds everything else that we do. The rest of the money for that workable project.
It's a great use for it. And I'm like Tommy, every time we see a spotlight, it's special, and this is no exception. It's very special.
This program's been thriving since 2006, and we kind of realized probably not that many people do know about it.
Yeah.
Mr. Wyndham.
A follow up a second on Commissioner Berry's. I didn't get the answer that they got evidently. If a municipality or a county comes to y'all and says, we want to build a ramp. We want to do that. We've got 12.5 acres of land. We don't have any money. What is the procedure for putting it in order versus money on hand and everything like that? I guess is what I'm trying to say. You got to have a procedure that you grade every one of them on. That's all my asking.
That's a great question. So when Michael discussed the feasibility, just because they've got a piece of property doesn't really mean it's developable.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's got good access to the water. There may be dredging concerns, tidal concerns. Sometimes they just can't be permitted. Wetlands and various concerns. So it's just a project by project. So you first how developable it is, and then start working on the money. They've got money. If they don't have money, do they have grants available? and kind of looking at where that fits with our fish. We always work with the inland fisheries group, to understand, is it a good place for people to go fish first? Are they gonna catch stuff there? Is it good access to a allotted body of water that gets a lot of access? What accesses are close by? We're not gonna build one right next to an already existing site, so it's like kind of a shooting range program. We do look to try to fill gaps. The discussion with Commissioner Davis about the potential for them to make.
Sure.
Always looking to fill in the gaps.
I assume it goes to Brian. Brian, you look at it and you and Cam talk about it. It's in your ballywag and then you approve it.
Well, honestly, it's Gary and Christian and Darren, they coordinate amongst themselves with staff input and they're running their programs. Trust them in their decision making. Sometimes
that's it.
priority issues.
That's
come
within
to
their
us.
scope of decision-making responsibility.
Yeah, if an issue comes to us from a legislator and then that involves some discussions, we'll weigh in, but they have a process, they have a procedure and it works.
I would say it works excellent.
David,
So you mentioned like go to their site or what, so do they sell docks outside of us? Or is this just our facility?
No, they sell docks, like I say, to any municipality, nonprofits. We just got Bald Head Island requested some docks. They wanted to build their own dock system, so they buy the docks from Wise. Wise facility does operate as a standalone business. It's not funded by any of the other funds. When my team buys docks, that project fund goes to make it a self-sufficient.
We buy them from them as well.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, how about shooting range, shooting benches? Range.
They do make those. If you've been to any of our ranges, you see the shooting tubes we
Yeah.
use for sound suppression. They make those there. Most of the time when we build a range, the shooting shelter is built on site. But they have the ability to provide, retrofits and that type of thing.
I'm assuming that there's plenty of inmates who volunteer. Oh, I got just make a struggle with.
Yeah, for the folks at the prison, COVID was hard with the prisons that they weren't allowed to do that much. That facility, sometimes they run into staffing shortages at the prison, which means they can't hold as many prisoners and that means our available workforce gets reduced sometimes, so. That's why the partnership's critical.
Em, you had some comments?
Yeah, I would just to, I guess, celebrate this program, for, again, it's clear that this is new to several of the commissioners here. But I personally have been at this facility several times, and I did want to echo something Michael said, but this is a great relationship that we have with the Department of Public Safety, first and foremost. And we recently re-engaged with the new leadership I did with staff with the Department of Public Safety to make this a long-standing future relationship as well. So I just wanted to commend the Department of Public Safety and their commitment to the Wildlife Commission of the importance of this is a quality product. But this is the story of our mission about providing opportunity, because we talk a lot about it at this table about habitat, wildlife species, but without public access in the state of North Carolina from the mountains to the coast, our mission fails. And this is the support of that. This is an agency program. And thank you to the people that came before us that set this up. Eric Christopherson was very influential. And Sam Seamster, who just retired, I must say, he was there for a long time and just recently retired. We have a new person there, as Michael has highlighted, but thanks to all the staff. But this is the mission of the Wildlife Commission right here. So
It's a touchy-feely thing.
Anything else before we move on? John?
I personally have fished some docks like this up at Owen Park up in the mountains and also at Azalea. And they're excellent places to fish. Those little cutouts you see there are terrific for 5 and 6 year olds, plus people in wheelchairs. And you can't hardly see it, but underneath the ones that are like that, there's a little shelf underneath there to put your stuff. And they fish very, very well. And it's a great design. And it doesn't take long for the locals to get their pocket knives out and put little notches in there so they can lean up their poles. and that helps. And so whoever does that, I appreciate it, but it's probably not you. But thank you.
Any further questions? Thanks for the presentation. I think, as noted, it was good to get today and everybody learn about this project. This time we'll move forward on the agenda, and I'll recognize Ben Solomon, who's our Assistant Chief of Land Acquisition Manager, who's going to present 5 Phase 2 land acquisition projects that have been recommended and brought forward to the commission today for your consideration and approval. Ben, if you'll present them all at one time, and I'll call for a vote at the end of them when you're through with all 5 of them.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Land acquisition and property matters for today will include 5 Phase 2 land acquisitions and 2 other property matters. We'll start with the Griffin tract, the Kelly Cove tract in Macon County. This is a 95-acre tract. It'll be in addition to Need More Game Land. Moving forward, Exhibit D2 will be our Griffin tract. This will be a 7-acre addition to Sandy Mush Game Land in Buncombe County. Our Exhibit D3 is our Richardson tract, which is a 2.5-acre tract that will be in addition to Three Top Mountain Game Land in Ashe County. Exhibit D4 is our Spencer Bay acquisition, which is 2,966 acres in Hyde County to include a new permit-only waterfowl impoundment. Exhibit D5 is our Paynes Branch tract, which totals 209 acres in Forsyth and Stokes County, which will be an addition of a new game land in an underserved area. Staff and Land Acquisition and Property Committee recommend approval of exhibits D1 through D5.
And at this time, I'll entertain a motion in a second for approval of exhibits D1, D2, D3, D4, and D5 as presented.
So move.
Got to move.
Second.
Give direct.
We'll do Griffin and Standback. Or who made the motion?
Rated, but
Right.
either way.
Okay, Ray, I'm sorry. I mean, all of you said it at one time. Ray, Standback. You got a motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries to approve these 5 Phase 2 land acquisitions. Then if you'll proceed to the next matter, and we're going to break up the next 2 because we have a recusal on the second one. So if you'll proceed with the voting request for Burke County.
Yes, sir. Our first other property matter is Exhibit E1. It is the North Bend Boating Access Area Conservation Easement Request. It is in Burke County. This is a development site for our future North Bend Boating Access Area. It is a riparian easement. Staff recommend approval of Exhibit E1.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion, a second for approval of Exhibit E1.
So move, Alexander.
Second.
Alexander and Clifton. Any further discussion, deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The next one is discussion of the NCDOT easement, which we have a recusal, and so we'll separate that out, which we'll do that as a separate vote, but we have a recusal on that, and you'll move forward, Ben.
Our final exhibit for today is Exhibit E2. It is a DOT easement request in Henderson County for a bridge replacement project. This will include a right-of-way, drainage, utility, and temporary construction easement, and compensation was approximately $37,000. Staff and Land Acquisition and Property Committee recommend approval of Exhibit E2.
I'll entertain a motion, a second for approval of Exhibit E2. Stand back and Alford. Any further discussion, deliberation? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Ben, you got anything else?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, very good. At this time, I'll recognize Melville Bonner to present rulemaking adoptions. big game harvest and motorboat registrations. These are your exhibits G1, F1 and G2 in your F2 and G2 in your packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everyone. The first rulemaking item on the agenda today is the permanent adoption of Rule 10B 0113, Big Game Harvest Reports, Exhibits F1 and F2. Amendments to this rule are necessary to expand the recording and reporting options to include new technology the Commission implemented as part of the transition to our third-party licensed vendor. This new technology allows hunters to validate and to register their big game harvest through the new WRC mobile app. The second and final rulemaking item on the agenda today is for the permanent adoption of Rule 10F 10F0100 motorboat registration, exhibits G1 and G2, which includes 10F0102, application for certificate of vessel number, 10F0104, certificate of number, 10F0109, temporary certificate of number. Amendments to these rules are necessary to match the United States Coast Guard vessel data collection points and certificate of number terminology. At this time, staff recommends the permanent adoption of 10B 0113 Big Game Harvest Reports and the 10F 0100 motorboat registration rules as presented at yesterday's Committee of the Whole.
This time I'll entertain a motion, a second for the approval of the exhibits F2 and G2. A motion from Commissioner Hall, second from Commissioner Ruffin. Any further comments or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melvin. And at this time, we'll call on Brad Howard.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm presenting on exhibits H1 and H2. There it is. So you will take both of these together, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
sir. Exhibit H1, both exhibits are dealing with temporary or permanent CWD rules. The motion before us will be to consider request to publish notice of text with an open comment period and a public hearing for the proposed rules of 10B 0501 and 0503. And exhibit H2 is the fiscal note associated with each of those rules. Staff recommends approval of both exhibits, Mr. Chair.
Time I will entertain a motion, a second for approval of the exhibits H1 and H2. So moved. Second. Seegers and Hall. Motion in a second. Any further discussion, comments? Hear none, all those in favor of adoption of H1 and H2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Betsy Haywood, you're on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First on the agenda, we have a request on permanent rules adoption as discussed yesterday in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole. Staff is going to recommend that the Commission adopt the text of two permanent rules, and the earliest effective date of these two rules will be September 1, 2023. First, in Exhibit I2, we have 15A NCAC 10F.0310 Dare County for amendments to add a no-wake zone in the waters of Mott's Creek at Cape Hatteras National Seashore, located at the Oregon Inlet Fishing Center and Marina, public boat ramp and kayak launch area, and the Oregon Inlet U.S. Coast Guard Station, and amendments to incorporate into the NCAC the names and addresses of the boating access areas in Dare County. Second, in Exhibit J2, 15A NCAC 10F.0374, currently called Cube Yadkin Generation, two amendments, one to change the name of Cube Yadkin Generation to Cube Hydro Carolinas, and to establish safety zones and restricted areas at High Rock, Tuckertown, Narrows, and Falls hydroelectric stations on the Yadkin River in Rowan, Davidson, Stanley, and Montgomery counties to prohibit swimming in restricted areas and to prohibit the discharge of a firearm within restricted areas. Staff recommends your consideration of adoption of these two permanent rules.
At this time, I'll accept a motion in a second for approval and adoption of exhibits I2 and J2 as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Wyndham, second by Stanback. Any further discussion, comments? Hear none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion. Go ahead.
Next, we have consideration of temporary rule adoption under 15A NCAC 10F.0305, Brunswick County. This is a request from the town of Sunset Beach in Brunswick County for a temporary no-wake zone in a portion of South Jenks Creek for the duration of phase 2 of the town of Sunset Beach shallow draft navigation project. The earliest effective date of the temporary rule will be August 15th, 2023. Staff recommends adoption of this temporary rule.
I'll entertain a motion in a second for adoption and approval of exhibit K2.
So moved.
Wyndham,
Second.
second by Alford. Any further comments? Hear none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Betsy, you got the last one, right?
Thank you. Yes, sir. Lastly, we have permanent rulemaking request, notice of text for 15A NCAC 10F.0333 Mecklenburg and Gaston counties. This is an application for on behalf of Duke Energy Carolinas LLC by the Lake Wiley Marine Commission to publish notice of text in the North Carolina Register with an open comment and public hearing to create a restricted area where vessel entry is prohibited in a small cove where a swim beach is located at the South Point access area in Gaston County, and to incorporate into the NCAC the South Point boating access area no wake zone. Staff recommends your approval to allow us to proceed with notice of text.
I'll entertain the motion in a second for adoption and approval of exhibit L. Barry, motion, second from who?
Alexander.
Alexander. Got a motion and a second on the floor to approve exhibit L. Any further discussions? Hear none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you, sir.
And I will now move forward to Wildlife Management Division. Presentation, staff recommendation for final adoption of 2 species conservation plans, bog turtle, southern hognose snake. Sarah Schwartz.
Thank you, Chairman. And yesterday during our Hinges meeting, we reviewed public comments on the bog turtle conservation plan, which is exhibit M1, and the southern hognose snake conservation plan, which you might want to flip faster through this, but it's very long, the bog turtle conservation plan. And the southern hognose snake conservation plan. All public comments were in support. So we ask and recommend for approval of these conservation plans. Would you like to take these together?
Yes,
Chairman
ma'am.
Crowe?
Yes.
Okay.
So this
Staff-
time,
Staff recommends approval of these plans.
okay, at this time, I'd entertain a motion in a second for adoption approval of exhibits M1 and M2.
Motion.
Got a motion from Hayden Rogers, second by Stanback. Any further comments, concerns, questions of this? Hear none, all those in favor of adoption of M1 and M2 signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Inland Fisheries, Christian Waters, our Inland Fisheries Division Chief. Consider request from Town of Black Mountain for Mountain Heritage Trout City request.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just have the one item today. It is Exhibit N as presented yesterday to the Fisheries Committee. It is a request and the associated documents for designating the town of Black Mountain as a Mountain Heritage Trout City, and then recognizing a section of the Swananoa River as Mountain Heritage Trout Waters. Staff recommends approval of Exhibit N.
I'll entertain a motion second for approval and adoption of Exhibit N as presented and recommended.
I'll make that motion.
Got it from Chairman and second here, Stone and Seegers. Any further comments or questions? Hear none, all in favor of adoption of Exhibit N, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move forward now. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-243, at the first scheduled meeting of the commission after July 1st of each odd numbered year, the Wildlife Resources Commission shall select from among its membership a chairman and a vice chairman who shall serve terms of 2 years or until their successors are elected and qualified. The committee of the whole considered this item yesterday, brought and prepared to bring forward 2 nominations today. We'll begin with call for nominations for and vote for vice chair.
Mark Craig.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to elect Mark Craig vice chairman. Are there any further comments or questions?
Yes, man.
Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mark Craig is elected vice chairman. Motion passes. At this time, we'll accept nominations and vote for chairman.
I'd like to nominate Monty Brunt.
Second. Who made the second? Steve Wyndham. Bonville. Any further? Any further discussion? All those in favor of election of this chairman, once again, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And it's an honor, more than you realize. At this time, again, we talked about it yesterday, the job that Tommy Vonville has done, his dedication to the commission over the last 2 years, his experience, what he brought to the table, the respect he commands from our staff and the commission. I appreciate working with you for the last 2 years, and you've been a big part of how we've moved the commission forward. And I thank you for that and appreciate personally what you've been able to do. So I can assure you that. You got any comments you want to make, Tommy? Other than that?
No, other. It's a pleasure for me to be here under any circumstance. Thank all of you.
With that, with a change here in leadership, we're going to have some committee changes, some chair spots I'm going to rotate. I'll be working on the committee assignments before the August meeting. If any of y'all have any requests of a committee you'd like to serve or change, or we're going to have some committee chairs. I've already had some discussions with some of you, and we'll continue to have some discussions, but we'll have that list out by the August meeting. So be on the lookout for that. And so I appreciate everything. Look forward to working with you. Appreciate your confidence in me. Appreciate everything y'all have done and support over the years. We've had some heavy lifting over the last 2 years. I want to thank the legislature for approving our agency bill. It's very favorable to us. One of the big key things we got out of the agency bill was to get proclamation authority for CWD, which allows us not to have all these meetings to do emergency rules, temporary rules, takes a little work burden off of our staff, and it allows us to move more quickly with CWD as that moves forward, and that gives our executive director to issue proclamation authority in consultation with the commission. We've got some exemptions on our construction that we've seen today with boat access areas, public fishing dock areas, to get those through the process quicker and more efficiently. And we do appreciate the legislature and the governor approving our agency bill. And I don't think we had a change in it, did we, Ashton? Other than they had one legislator add an addition to it, but and Ashton, I tell you, I give him kudos. He's over the legislature every day. Sometimes we talk 2 or 3 times a day. He works with many members of the commission. He's well respected at the General Assembly over there. I get constant, good, positive feedback from members of the House and the Senate of working with Ashton. He knows the legislative process over there very well, knows how to handle committees, know how to committee substitutes, and he keeps a pulse with the experience of prior to working over there. And I just want to say kudos for your help in doing that and all the.
I'll tell you this, sometimes he can aggravate the thunder out of various legislators. I can tell you that.
Okay, you have experience, Sheriff.
I do, yes, sir. He darkened my door many days.
Well, good. That's good. And the work that all you commissioners have done, working with the legislature, we still, we don't have a final budget. We don't know the outcome of some of our other requests, particularly pertaining to law enforcement, but we're hopeful there that they will get good treatment there. But there's a lot of things that have happened that would not have happened without every commissioner here being involved, and every time you've been called, you've answered the bell, and we give you thanks for that. So other than that, I don't have anything else. I know Cam, you have some comments you want to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be brief. But I wanted to, as we have 685 incredible employees with the Wildlife Commission spread from the mountains to the coast, as we noted yesterday. Sometimes I forget to thank the people that I work with the most, and that is the deputy directors and Margot, and for Lisa Hokut, Kyle Briggs, and Brian McCray. It's a round the clock job, but so thank y'all for y'all support each and every day. Margot, you as well. Sometimes I bug the heck out of them, I must say, and then they always respond, and they're so supportive. So thank y'all for what you do. Again, Tommy Fonville, man, the last 2 years have been, well, we've gotten a lot accomplished in the last 2 years. And your leadership as vice chair, that role's still there, even though you don't carry the label, if you will. I still expect to interact with Tommy Fonville on a weekly basis as well, and he's a heavy lifter as well. So thank you for everything.
Pleasure.
Yep. For the other person that I interact with on a daily basis, Monty Crump. While the last 2 years, well, the last 4 under Dave Hull's leadership as chairman, and Monty was vice chair during those terms through COVID, and here we are, and the largest legislative ask that we've ever had in the agency, and everything that we're dealing with CWD. That a lot of these things were reviewed in the executive committee yesterday, but thank you, Monty, for those of you that have not been chairman. Some of you here at the table, as Wes and I have definitely discussed in the past, it's a full-time job that a chairman takes on. And I'll tell you, Monty Crump and I, we talk 5 days a week anyway, and sometimes more than that. And it's not 5-minute discussions. It's a lot. Thank you for your engagement and your willingness to do it again. I scratch my head, but thank you for being there for us. And, but that concludes my comments. Just thank you in general.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Here, none, meeting adjourned.